I'm Vanessa Reyes, 27, and I'm the first person in my family to graduate college, and I did it while working nights and paying my own way. For years, I supported my family in every way I could, emotionally, financially, even when they barely noticed. But when they skipped my graduation like it meant nothing, then showed up months later asking for a 75-0 loan, I knew I had to make a decision that would shift everything. Have you ever felt invisible to the people you sacrifice the most for? If that hits home, share your story in the comments. I promise, you're not alone. Before I dive into what happened, drop where you're watching from. And if you've ever had to draw a hard line to protect your peace, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. These are real stories about choosing yourself and what comes after. And trust me, you'll want to hear what happened next. I grew up in a neighborhood where the houses looked just alike. White vinyl siding, trimmed hedges, chain link fences that hadn't been replaced since the early 90s. Ours was no different. We weren't rich, but we had what we needed. Clothes from the clearance rack, peanut butter sandwiches in our school lunches, and hand-me-down bikes with rusted chains that still somehow worked. My dad fixed HVAC systems for a local company. He'd come home in stained overalls, wipe his hands on a rag, and collapse in front of the TV. My mom ran a home daycare, the kind where the living room smelled like applesauce and antiseptic wipes, and the TV was always tuned to cartoons. She'd spend her day wrangling toddlers, and by dinner, she was spent. We weren't an emotional family. No hugs before school, no I love yous at bedtime. We didn't have photo albums full of memories or inside jokes that got passed around at holidays. My parents didn't believe in fuss. We're not sentimental people, my dad used to say whenever someone suggested a celebration. My mom called it keeping things simple. Still, I tried. I was the oldest of three. My younger brothers, Jake and Tyler, were closer to each other in age and in temperament. I was the responsible one. The one who kept things moving when my parents were too tired or distracted. I picked the boys up from school, helped them with homework, even cooked dinner some nights when mom had a migraine. I didn't resent it, not really. I just assumed that's what the oldest does. In high school, I stayed out of trouble. I got good grades, joined the yearbook club, worked weekends at a grocery store to save for college. I didn't drink, didn't sneak out, didn't give my parents a reason to worry. I thought if I was dependable enough, respectful enough, maybe they'd start seeing me for more than just a built-in babysitter. That didn't happen. Jake was the charmer, Tyler was the wild card. My parents always had stories about their latest antics, funny things they said, impressive plays in a baseball game, even their pranks at school. With me, they just said I was solid. It wasn't an insult, but it wasn't praise either. When it came time to apply to college, I didn't expect a parade, but I thought maybe they'd sit with me while I filled out applications, maybe ask about my major, my goals. Instead, my mom said, "You'll probably just end up transferring somewhere local after a year. Don't stress yourself out." Still, I applied to 6 schools, got into 5, and chose the one with the best scholarship offer, a state university 3 hours away. Not the most prestigious, but it had a solid program in business administration. I didn't ask them for a dime. Between my job, grants, and federal aid, I scraped by. I bought used textbooks, made every dollar stretch, and picked up extra shifts wherever I could. Some semesters, I worked 30 hours a week on top of classes. I didn't go home much, gas was expensive, and I didn't like asking to borrow the car. I stayed in touch though. I sent pictures when I made the dean's list, texted them when I landed my first internship, even told them about the time my professors singled out my project in front of the class. They always replied eventually, with a thumbs up or a short, "Nice work." Never a phone call, never a visit. But I kept trying. Senior year, I started planning for graduation months in advance. It felt like a milestone worth celebrating. I sent my family the date in January for a May ceremony. No excuses. I texted in the family group chat, "Y'all better be there. First one in the family to graduate college." I even offered to buy their tickets. My dad said, We'll see what's going on that weekend. My mom replied, You know we don't make a big deal out of ceremonies. I sent reminders anyway, bought the extra seats, paid for the gown, took the photo package even though it felt expensive. I didn't care. I wanted that moment captured. My roommates' families were planning hotel stays and group dinners. One even had a custom banner printed with her name and major. I told myself I didn't need that. I just wanted my family in the audience. One row of familiar faces smiling as I crossed the stage. That's it. But the week before, I could already feel them pulling away. My mom mentioned she might be working late on Friday. My dad said he wasn't sure he could take time off. My brother stopped responding to my messages. Still, I held out hope. The night before the ceremony, I texted again. Ceremony starts at 10 a.m. Get there early, parking is a mess. No response. That morning, I curled my hair, put on a little makeup, and pinned my cap to my head with shaking hands. I triple-checked the tickets in my bag. I figured maybe they'd surprise me. Maybe they didn't want to make a big deal online, but they were on their way. I walked into the auditorium with my classmates, heart pounding. As names were called and students rose to cheers and camera flashes, I kept scanning the crowd. Row after row, I looked for my dad's baseball cap, my mom's familiar glasses, even my brother's slouchy posture. Nothing. I sat through the whole ceremony alone. No one saved me a seat. No one waved. No one clapped louder when they called my name. I don't remember much about the speech or even walking across the stage. I just remember sitting there afterward, waiting, as the auditorium emptied out. Watching students run into the arms of their families while I checked my phone for any messages. There was one. From my mom. We're busy today. Hope it went well. That was it. I took a photo on my own, in the corner of the auditorium, with the cleaning staff sweeping up in the background. My smile was tight. My cap was slightly crooked, but it's the only photo I have from that day. I walked back to my apartment, changed out of my gown, and made myself a sandwich. No celebration. No dinner. No hug. Just me. A cold sandwich. And the realization that I had crossed that milestone alone. I didn't cry. Not that day. Not even that night. I think I was too stunned. Too numb. I told myself maybe they had a good reason. Maybe something came up. Maybe they didn't understand how important it was to me. But somewhere deep down, I knew. They understood. They just didn't care enough to show up. I think I knew they weren't coming before they said it outright. It started in March, about 2 months before graduation. I was on a video call with my mom while I was folding laundry. Nothing serious, just the usual check-in. I mentioned how the school had sent out ceremony details and that I'd already submitted my RSVP. She nodded distractedly while checking something on her phone. Oh, that's nice. Do you need anything for it? I paused, a little surprised. Just for you guys to be there, I said. It's on Saturday, May 14th. I'll send the info again just to make sure. Right, she said, still scrolling. We'll look into it. That was the first sign. Not a flat-out no, but not the kind of interest you'd expect when your kid is the first in the family to earn a degree. I tried not to read into it too much. People get busy. Maybe she just needed time to process it. Over the next few weeks, I kept mentioning it casually. Texted the group chat with the link to the school's graduation page. I even sent a picture of my cap, which I'd started decorating with a small quote I liked. I did it anyway. No one responded. Not even a heart emoji. One weekend in April, I called home while I was walking back from a coffee shop. It was a nice day. Sunny, warm, the kind that made everything feel a little lighter. My brother Jake answered. Hey, you guys get the info I sent about graduation? I asked. Yeah, he said. I think Mom mentioned it. I waited, thinking he'd say something more. He didn't. It's kind of a big deal, I added. It's just a ceremony, right? He said. I mean, you already did the hard part. What's the point of sitting around for hours in those weird gowns? I laughed, but not because it was funny. It's not about the gown. It's about having people there. It's the first time I'm walking across a stage for something I built myself. He said something like, "Yeah, I get that." But I could tell he didn't. The next day, I called my mom again. She picked up on the second ring. I told her the final schedule was out and asked if they were planning to come. She paused. "Well, May's a pretty full month," she said. "The church bake sale is that weekend. And your dad's been slammed with work. You know how spring is for HVAC. Everyone wants their systems checked before summer." "It's just one day," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'd really like you there." "We'll see," she said. "It depends on what's going on." No offer to rearrange anything. No follow-up questions, just vague deflection. I hung up and stared at the phone screen for a long time. I wasn't asking for much. I'd gone through 4 years without any help from them, financial or otherwise. I didn't expect a party or a banner. I just wanted to know that when I looked out into the crowd, I'd see someone there for me. The week before graduation, I brought it up one last time. It was a Sunday night. I was making pasta in my tiny kitchen and called home while the water was boiling. My dad answered this time. He rarely picked up unless my mom wasn't around. "Hey, just checking in," I said. "Wanted to make sure you had the details for Saturday. The school's asking us to confirm guest count." He hesitated. "We're still figuring that out. Your mom's got a lot going on this week." "Is it the bake sale again?" I asked. "Because I'd really like to know if you're coming. I have to give them a final count for seating." He let out a tired sigh. "Look, we're proud of you, but we've been through a lot lately. Money's tight, work is nuts, we can't always drop everything." "I'm not asking you to drop everything. I'm asking you to come to one thing. One morning, after 4 years." There was a long silence. "We'll see," he said again. That was it. After we hung up, I stood at the stove until the water boiled over and hissed down the sides of the pot. I didn't remind them again after that. I didn't bring it up in the family chat. I didn't send one more email with parking instructions or a reminder about cap and gown photos. I'd gotten the message. What hurt wasn't just the idea that they might miss it. It was that they didn't even seem conflicted. There was no struggle in their voices. No, "We really wish we could." Just blank indifference. I started noticing the little ways they'd been pulling back for a while now. My texts about midterms and job interviews went unanswered or got one-word replies. Calls got shorter. The conversations more surface level. Jake had stopped asking about school altogether. Tyler mostly sent memes or links to videos. We hadn't had a real talk in months. I told myself they were just distracted. Life was busy. I wasn't the center of their world. But then I remembered all the times I had shown up for them. The time Jake needed help drafting his resume and I spent a whole weekend walking him through job boards. Or when Tyler got into a fight at school and I drove home that same night to help smooth things over. Even earlier, when I was in high school and working late shifts at the diner, I still made it to Tyler's baseball games. I helped Jake prep for his SATs, even though I had exams the next day. I was always there. I didn't expect them to match that energy exactly, but I thought they'd at least try. That week, as I prepped for finals and filled out HR forms for my new job offer, the realization settled in slowly. I'd been showing up for people who wouldn't cross the street for me. I'd been excusing it as practicality, as a cultural thing. My parents weren't warm, but they cared in their own way. Maybe they just didn't know how to express it. But now I wasn't so sure. Because when something matters to you, you make it happen. You move things around, you get up early, you figure it out. They didn't. I didn't know yet that this was just the beginning. That they'd come back months later with a smile and a favor to ask. That the same people who skipped my graduation would suddenly remember my name when money got involved. But even then, standing in that tiny kitchen stirring pasta I no longer felt like eating, I could feel the foundation shifting. Something I'd built my whole identity on, that if I worked hard enough, was loyal enough, gave enough, they'd eventually see me, was beginning to crack. And once that crack opened, It didn't take much for the rest to fall through. The morning of graduation, I woke up before my alarm. I'd barely slept, kept checking my phone all night like maybe they'd changed their minds. Maybe they'd text saying they were on the road, running a little late, asking where to park, but there was nothing. Just the usual group chat silence and a few automated emails from the university. I got dressed slowly, pressed my gown with an iron I borrowed from my roommate. The cap didn't sit right on my head, kept sliding off no matter how many bobby pins I used. I took it off, started again. There was a small mirror propped up against the windowsill, and in it, I saw someone who looked exhausted but determined. I took a photo. Just one. Me in my apartment bedroom standing next to a plastic laundry bin, trying to smile like this was a normal day. Outside, the sidewalks were full of students in robes, parents trailing behind with cameras, flowers, and coffee cups. My roommates were being picked up by their families at 9. One of them, Megan, knocked on my door before she left. "You good?" she asked. I nodded. "Yeah, I'll just meet everyone at the ceremony." She hesitated. "You want me to save you a seat with us?" I almost said yes. I almost asked to be folded into someone else's family for the morning. But I couldn't do it. "I'll be fine," I said. She gave me a quick hug and left. The walk to the auditorium took 20 minutes. I passed banners with the school's logo, signs that said, "Congratulations, class of 2025, and parents posing with their kids in front of the big bronze statue near the entrance. I found my place in line by last name and filed in with everyone else. Inside, the space was massive. Rows of folding chairs for the graduates, a raised stage with polished wooden podiums, and hundreds of seats fanned out behind us for the audience. When the ceremony started, I looked back over my shoulder. Just a quick scan of the crowd. Then again. And again. Nothing. No mom clutching her purse and squinting to find me. No dad with his phone out, filming on shaky hands. No brothers making faces or pretending to cheer ironically. Just strangers. The dean gave her welcome speech. The guest speaker told a long story about perseverance. Names started being called row by row. People clapped, some politely, others with over-the-top whoops and air horns. I watched students hug their siblings, high-five their parents. One girl in front of me cried when her grandfather stood to clap. When it was my turn, I walked across the stage to the sound of my own footsteps. There was polite applause, probably from staff or someone else's family not paying attention to who was who. But no one stood. No one called out my name. No one saw it happen. I shook the dean's hand, took the diploma cover, and walked off the other side of the stage with a smile I didn't feel. Afterward, the graduates poured out into the courtyard for photos. The area was a swarm of activity. Families holding flowers, cameras flashing, toddlers running under folding tables. People were hugging, crying, laughing. I walked out alone and stood by one of the fountains, out of the way. I held my phone like I was waiting for someone, but I wasn't. I was just giving myself something to do. I kept telling myself maybe they were late. Maybe traffic had been worse than expected. Maybe they were out there, just trying to find parking. So I waited. 10 minutes. 20. 45. I watched the crowd thin out. Slowly, students started heading off to brunches and dinners and photo shoots with their extended families. One girl left with balloons shaped like the numbers 25 tied to her wrist. I checked my phone again. No calls, no missed texts, no "we're outside" or "running late." Nothing. Eventually, a staff member walked up and asked if I needed anything. I said no, just waiting. After another 10 minutes, I walked back inside the auditorium. It was mostly empty by then. A few staff stacking chairs. A custodian sweeping the aisle. I sat down in the back row and stared at the stage. The same stage I'd crossed less than an hour ago. I thought about getting up and taking a photo of myself right there, just to mark the moment. I'd seen other students do it, posing with their families in front of the podium. But I didn't move. I just sat there, hands folded in my lap, gown wrinkled in my lap from the heat. Eventually, the custodian gave me a gentle smile and said, "We're closing up in a few, hon." I nodded. "Yeah, I'm going." I walked home alone. The cap was in my tote bag, my hair flattened where the bobby pins had been. I stopped at the corner store and bought a frozen pizza and a Coke. The cashier didn't notice the gown. Or if he did, he didn't say anything. Back in my apartment, I hung the gown on the closet door, tags still on it. I didn't take it off the hanger. I just looked at it for a while, then sat down on the couch and turned on the TV. Around 6, I got a text from my mom. "We were busy today. You know how Sundays are." That was all. No congratulations, no apology, no call. Just, "We were busy." I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to decide how to respond. In the end, I didn't. That night, I didn't eat the pizza. I wasn't hungry anymore. I left it in the oven too long and it burned around the edges. The apartment smelled like scorched cheese for hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just turned the lights off and lay on the couch, watching the ceiling fan spin. The next morning, I got up and folded the gown into a box. I didn't want it hanging there, reminding me. I slid the box under the bed and got dressed for my shift at the cafe. No one asked how graduation went. No one at work knew it had happened. I think that's what struck me the most. That something I had worked 4 years for, something that was supposed to mark the beginning of everything, had passed by without anyone noticing. Except me. And maybe that was the part that hurt most of all. Not that they missed it, but that they didn't even think it mattered. I didn't confront them. I didn't ask why they hadn't come. I didn't give them the speech I'd rehearsed in my head about what it meant to sit alone in a sea of cheering families, about how it felt to realize you'd been invisible the entire time. I just went quiet. I stopped texting the group chat, stopped sending updates. I used to forward them photos of my class projects, articles I was reading, random things that made me laugh. That stopped. Not out of spite. Just because I couldn't see the point anymore. The silence didn't seem to bother anyone. No one followed up. No one asked why I hadn't sent pictures from graduation. Not one person called. I went back to work the Monday after the ceremony like it had been any other weekend. I pulled espresso shots, wiped down counters, smiled at regulars, and said congrats to classmates who came in still riding the high of the day before. One girl I knew from statistics showed me a photo of her family in matching t-shirts that said, "Proud mom of a graduate." I smiled and nodded, told her the picture was great. Then I clocked out 10 minutes early and walked home before I could completely unravel. At night, I sat at my desk and updated my resume. I submitted the last of my job applications. By then, I already had a few interviews lined up. The best one was with a financial consulting firm in Chicago. Mid-sized company, but growing fast. I'd connected with one of their recruiters at a university job fair the previous semester. We scheduled a video interview, then another, then a final one with 2 of the senior partners. A week later, I got the call. The offer was better than I expected. Starting salary, just over 6 figures. Remote for the first year with an option to relocate later. Health insurance. Retirement matching. Stock options. Paid time off. It felt surreal. I didn't tell my family. Instead, I called my old professor, Melissa Tran. She taught my business ethics class junior year and stayed in touch after I helped her on a research project. She'd become a kind of unofficial mentor. The person I emailed whenever I needed help navigating something too big for Google. I told her everything. About the offer, the position, the salary. She didn't hesitate. "You earned every bit of that. I hope you let it all sink in." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because I didn't know how else to react. "You know what's wild?" I said. "I got the call 2 days after graduation, and I haven't told my parents. Not even once." She was quiet for a second, then said, "Not everyone who raises you knows how to celebrate you. Sometimes you have to learn how to celebrate yourself." That sentence stuck with me. It didn't come with fanfare. Just that calm certainty Melissa always had when she said things that cut deeper than they sounded. I started the job in June, set up a home office in the corner of my apartment, bought a decent chair, a second monitor, a keyboard that didn't sound like a typewriter. My first paycheck hit at the end of the month. I stared at the direct deposit confirmation for a long time. Not because I was shocked by the amount, but because it was the first time in my life I could breathe. I paid off my remaining student credit card in full, took my old laptop to get fixed instead of struggling through another frozen screen, replaced the tires on my car without asking for a payment plan. It was small stuff, but it felt like reclaiming ground. Like I was finally building something that couldn't be taken or ignored. The job itself was intense, but I liked it. The work challenged me and the team treated me like an equal. During our weekly calls, no one cared where I came from. They cared about my ideas, my input, my results. My manager, Leah, asked me to lead a client presentation in week 3. I prepped obsessively. She gave me feedback, but not in a condescending way, just direct, focused, like she assumed I could handle it. "You've got good instincts," she told me after the meeting. "Trust them." It was the first time anyone had said something like that to me without a backhanded compliment attached. By July, I was deep into my first big project, a retail client restructuring their profit margins. The kind of assignment I used to read about in textbooks, imagining someday I might be qualified for. Now I was building the models, presenting strategy options, leading calls. I kept my head down and worked. I didn't post about it online. I didn't tell anyone outside of Melissa and a couple former classmates. My family still hadn't followed up. Not once. They knew I'd graduated. I'd made that clear. But they never asked how the ceremony went. Never asked about jobs or plans or what I was doing next. I saw on Facebook that Jake got a new truck. Tyler was posting photos from some trip with friends at a cabin. My mom shared a meme about how real family doesn't need constant validation. I didn't know if that was about me, but it didn't matter anymore. The only person who reached out was my aunt, on my dad's side. She sent a simple message. "Heard you graduated, congrats, sweetie. Hope you're doing well." I stared at that message longer than I should have, unsure what to say. Eventually, I just wrote back, "Thank you. I am." Because I was. There was no big epiphany, no dramatic unraveling, just a slow realization that I didn't owe anyone an explanation for how I'd gotten here. They hadn't come to graduation. They hadn't sent flowers or cards or even a late phone call. But they also hadn't been the ones staying up until 2 a.m. to finish group projects after a shift at the cafe. They weren't the ones who walked into interviews with secondhand suits and an outdated laptop and still managed to get the offer. They weren't part of this. And it showed. My life moved forward. Theirs didn't. I wasn't trying to rub it in anyone's face. I just stopped waiting for people who never showed up. And for the first time in my life, that didn't feel like a loss. It felt like clarity. By the time August rolled around, I'd cleared every financial hurdle that used to keep me up at night. My loans, gone. Credit cards, zero balance. I wasn't rich, not by any stretch, but I had something I'd never had before. Room to breathe. I bought a used sedan with cash, nothing fancy, but reliable and mine. I signed the papers at a small dealership downtown and sat in the driver's seat for a while before starting the engine. No one was there to take a photo. No one knew I was even car shopping. But it didn't matter. The moment felt big anyway. I drove off the lot with the windows down and the radio low, just listening to the quiet rhythm of the tires on pavement. It sounded like freedom. My days were full. I worked, I slept, I cooked in my tiny kitchen. I went to the gym sometimes just to feel like I had a routine. Occasionally, I'd text Melissa or grab coffee with someone from my cohort who happened to be in town, but mostly I kept to myself. It was peaceful. Then one Thursday morning, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but it had my hometown area code. I answered without thinking. "Hey, sweetheart." My mom's voice said, soft in a way I hadn't heard in years. It's been a while. I didn't respond right away. Just let the silence stretch. She filled it fast. We've been meaning to reach out, she said. We're so proud of you. That stopped me. Not the words, those were easy enough to say. It was the timing. 3 months of silence, and now suddenly they were proud? I saw something online about your company, she added quickly. You've got a good job now, right? Real stable? I still hadn't said anything. I was waiting. And sure enough, here it came. So, we've run into a little bit of a situation. There it was. She said something about the house. Water damage from a storm. Insurance refusing to cover it. Then something about Jake. Some unexpected medical bills. The numbers started piling up. It all sounded practiced, but messy, like they hadn't quite agreed on the story beforehand. We just need a little help, she said. Temporary, of course. We'd pay you back as soon as things settle down. Then she said it. 75,000 would cover most of it. She said it like she was asking to borrow a shovel, like the number had no weight. I know it's a lot, she added, but you're doing really well now, and it's not like we've asked you for anything before. I could feel my pulse in my jaw, not because I was angry, but because it was all so absurd. Then I heard him in the background, my dad. He must have taken the phone from her because his voice came on next. Hey kiddo, long time, he chuckled, like we were catching up over dinner. We always knew you'd make something of yourself, even if we didn't always say it. That sentence landed like a slap, so casual, so late. I didn't react. I didn't push back. I just let them talk. They kept going, how proud they were, how much Jake was struggling, how tight things had gotten since Dad had to take fewer contracts. They used words like family and support and temporary, like they thought if they framed it right, I'd forget everything that came before it. Eventually they paused, waiting. I could have said a lot, but I didn't. I said something simple. Hang on, I told them. I want to show you something. I walked over to my laptop and opened the photo. The only one I took that day. Me, in a cap and gown, sitting completely alone in the back of the auditorium. Everyone else had gone. The janitor was still sweeping. My tassel was crooked. I wasn't smiling. I sent it to my mom's email without saying a word. I waited. The silence stretched for nearly 30 seconds. I heard my mom's breath hitch. Then my dad cleared his throat, but didn't speak. This is what that day looked like for me, I said quietly. I waited. I looked for you in every row. I told myself maybe you were running late. Maybe you got lost, but you didn't come, and no one even asked about it after. More silence. I wasn't crying. I wasn't yelling. I was just done pretending. You told me it was just a ceremony, that you were busy, that it wasn't a big deal, I went on. But now that I have something you want, now suddenly it matters that I made it. Sweetheart, my mom said, voice trembling, we didn't mean to hurt you. Things were just complicated back then. They're always complicated when I need something, I said. But when you need something, I'm supposed to drop everything, like none of that ever happened. We're still your parents, my dad said. Yeah, I replied. And I'm still your daughter, the one you didn't show up for. No one spoke after that. I let the silence settle, then said, I hope you find a way to figure things out, but I won't be your backup plan. And I hung up. I sat with that conversation for the rest of the day, replayed every word. Not because I was second-guessing myself, but because part of me couldn't believe it had finally happened. That after years of swallowing hurt and trying to earn approval, I'd drawn a line and held it. The next day, I got a single text from my mom. We're sorry. We didn't realize how much that day meant to you. I didn't reply. Because that wasn't true. They knew. They just didn't care until it cost them something. And by then, I'd already learned to stop paying the price. After that call, the silence stretched longer than usual. They didn't follow up, didn't argue, No more long explanations or promises to pay me back, just nothing. And I didn't block them. I didn't post about it. I didn't make a scene or tell everyone what happened. I just lived my life, like usual. Only this time, without the loop of obligation playing in the background. A week went by, then two, then almost a month. Then the whispers started. First, it was my aunt, my dad's sister. She called out of nowhere one night while I was reviewing a client presentation from home. I almost didn't answer. "I heard you and your mom had a falling out," she said. "No small talk, just straight into it." "I wouldn't call it that," I replied. She sighed. "They told me you're doing really well now, making good money. That's wonderful. But honey, family's still family." I waited. "They're going through a hard time," she said. "I know they should have been there for your graduation." I told them that. "But you're really going to hold a grudge over one day?" It wasn't one day. But I didn't bother explaining. "I'm not holding a grudge," I said. "I'm setting a boundary." She didn't like that answer. Said something about how success can change people, how money makes you cold if you're not careful. That was the theme from then on. The narrative. A few days later, my cousin messaged me on Instagram. Someone I hadn't spoken to in over a year. "Hey, just wanted to say congrats on all the career stuff. We're all proud of you. Hope you don't forget the little people now that you're ballin'-o." I didn't respond. Then came the accidental texts. My mom sending me photos of Jake in a hospital waiting room, no context. A message from my dad saying, "Your brother's trying to stay strong through all this." No follow-up. Just breadcrumbs. Hints. Like they wanted to reel me back in without saying it directly. "We miss you," one text said. "Tyler's been asking about you. Your grandma's birthday is coming up. Would love to see you there." But the tone was different now. There was no assumption that I'd drop everything and show up. No expectation of help. Because they finally understood something I'd spent years trying to ignore. I wasn't available like I used to be. And they were going to have to sit with that. Meanwhile, everything else in my life kept moving forward. At work, I got promoted to team lead on a new project. Leah called me into a virtual meeting and said, "You're running point on the next phase, you've earned it." I led my first full client call solo that week. I got feedback from the regional director saying my report was the best they'd seen that quarter. I upgraded to a bigger apartment. Nothing flashy, just a one-bedroom with more light and a dishwasher that actually worked. The building had a courtyard and a little gym in the basement. For the first time, I didn't have to hear my upstairs neighbors stomping around all night. I bought furniture piece by piece. No rush, no financing. A real bed frame. A couch that wasn't secondhand. Shelves I actually measured before installing. Then I booked a trip. 2 weeks in Portugal. Solo. I used points for the flight, paid cash for the Airbnb. It wasn't impulsive. I'd been planning it quietly for months. I told no one except Melissa and my manager. I walked through winding streets in Lisbon, sat in cafes with my laptop, read books on balconies overlooking terracotta rooftops. I took a cooking class with a local family, and when they asked about mine, I just said, "We're not that close." No one pried. No one judged. It felt like breathing clean air for the first time in years. Back home, the texts slowed down. I'd gone from being the family's built-in emotional labor to someone they couldn't quite reach anymore. I think they assumed time would soften me, that I'd come around. But distance didn't make me forget. It made things clearer. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I thought I would be. But what I felt was something quieter, like grief, but without the mourning. More like finally stepping out of a room I hadn't realized was dark until I saw the light outside. Every once in a while, I'd get another message. One of those vague, open-ended texts. "Hope you're well. Just thinking of you. Saw something that reminded me of you." Sometimes I replied. Sometimes I didn't. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I was just done trying to manage everyone else's feelings. Jake texted once, "Can we talk?" But I waited. 2 days later, he unsent the message. There was no big explosion. No final blow-up. Just a gradual shift. They had to adjust to the idea that I wasn't going to be the fixer anymore. The go-to. The one who quietly carried everything and never asked for anything back. And I had to adjust to the quiet that came with that. There were moments when it felt strange. When I saw a family walking together down the street or a sibling tagging another in a funny post, I'd feel it in my stomach for a second, like a ghost of something I used to want. But then it would pass. Because I'd finally built something that belonged to me. Not out of spite, not to prove anything, but because I needed a life that didn't require me to shrink in order to keep other people comfortable. They hadn't changed. Not really. But I had. And once that shift happens, once you stop needing people to become someone they've shown you they're not, you don't go back. You just move forward. And that's exactly what I did. The apology came on a random Tuesday. No build-up, no preamble, just a text that landed between a spam ad and a reminder from my dentist. You were right to be hurt. We weren't there. I'm sorry. That was it. From my mom. No qualifiers. No guilt trip. Not even a but to soften the blow. Just a plain sentence that hit harder than anything else she'd said in years. I stared at it for a long time. Read it 3 or 4 times. Part of me wanted to respond right away, acknowledge it, close the loop. But I didn't. I left it there, unread in our thread, for weeks. Not out of spite. I just needed time. It wasn't the first time she'd tried to break the silence, but it was the first time she didn't try to reframe the story. She didn't say she was busy, or that I was too sensitive. She just admitted it. And that mattered more than I expected it to. Still, I wasn't rushing to reopen the door. My life had moved into its own rhythm. Work, travel, dinners with friends, quiet nights reading on my balcony. I wasn't looking for a reunion. I'd already let go of that idea. But something about the tone of that message stuck with me. And not because I needed her to grovel. I didn't. I just needed to know she saw it. That for once, she didn't look away from the part of the story where she was the one who failed to show up. Months went by. Fall turned into winter. My firm announced a new expansion initiative and asked me to oversee the rollout. It meant longer hours, but it also meant more leadership experience, more trust from the senior team. I said yes without hesitation. Then one day in December, I got a follow-up text. If you're ever open to it, I'd love to grab lunch, just the 2 of us. Again, simple, not pushy. I took 2 days before replying. Okay. We met at a cafe near where I used to go as a kid. Neutral ground. Not too formal, not too familiar. I got there first, ordered a tea and picked a table near the window. She arrived 5 minutes later, coat still dusted with snow, face more tired than I remembered. She smiled cautiously. I nodded. Thanks for meeting me, she said, settling in across from me. I wasn't sure you'd say yes. I shrugged. I wasn't sure either. We didn't jump in. There was small talk first. Her job. The weather. Some update about a neighbor I hadn't thought about in years. I listened, kept my answers short. I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't wide open either. Eventually, she paused. I've replayed that day so many times, she said. Graduation. I don't know what I was thinking. We didn't even try, and I don't expect you to just forget it, but I wanted to say it again, face to face. I'm sorry. I looked at her, trying to gauge how much of that was real. It seemed real. I waited for you, I said. I kept looking at the door. Every time someone walked in, I thought it was you. Her face crumpled just slightly. She nodded. I know. I sat through the whole thing by myself. Then I sat in the back row for 45 minutes after, just in case. You didn't come, and no one even asked how it went. She didn't interrupt. She just let it hang there. I get that you didn't think it was a big deal, I said, but it was to me. And it wasn't just the ceremony. It was years of trying to make you proud and getting silence back. She blinked fast, then reached for her tea but didn't drink. I think we didn't know how to be proud, she said finally. Your dad and I, we grew up with nothing. no college, no milestones. We thought keeping you fed and out of trouble was enough. We didn't know how to show up for more than that. But I know that's not an excuse. It wasn't. But it was probably the closest I'd ever get to the full truth. I nodded. I'm not angry, I said. Not anymore. But I'm not going back to who I was. I used to drop everything for you. I used to chase your approval. That's over. I get it, she said. I'm not saying we can't talk. But I have boundaries now. She smiled, small and tired. That's fair. I paid the bill when it came. She didn't argue. We didn't hug when we left. Just a quiet take care and a nod before going our separate ways. After that, we stayed in touch but loosely. She'd text sometimes. Updates about my brothers. A photo of the dog. A recipe she thought I'd like. I responded when I felt like it. I visited for the holidays that year. Not the whole week, just 2 days. I brought my own rental car. Stayed in a hotel nearby. Made it clear I was keeping things on my terms. And to their credit, they didn't push. They tried. I noticed it in small things. My mom cooked the dish I used to like as a kid. My dad asked about my work without making a joke about fancy offices. Jake said thanks when I helped him edit his resume. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't deep, but it was different. They understood now that I wasn't the one holding everything together anymore. I wasn't the default caregiver, the family note-taker, the invisible backbone. I was just me, with limits, with a life, with a right to choose how much I gave. That was the difference. I let them try, but I didn't let them take. And that's where things stayed. Not healed, not broken, just recalibrated, balanced. They got used to the new version of me, the one who showed up when she wanted to, not when she was expected to. The one who could leave early from a family dinner and not feel the need to explain. And I got used to the quiet peace that came with letting go of the idea that they'd ever become the people I used to wish they were. They were who they were, and I was finally who I needed to be. It's been over a year since that phone call. The one where they asked for a loan like I was a bank. The one where I sent them a photo instead of a check. A lot has happened since then. I moved into a new place last spring. Not out of necessity, but choice. It's smaller than my last apartment, but quieter. Better light, less clutter. I bought everything in it on my own timeline. No rush, no debt. It's the kind of space that feels like it belongs to someone who's finally settled into their own skin. Someone who isn't chasing anything anymore. I opened a high-yield savings account and labeled it Freedom. Not for emergencies. Not for my parents' house repairs. Not for anyone's medical bills, but mine. Just for whatever I decide my next step should be. I've never felt more secure. On my desk, next to my monitor, there's a small silver frame. Inside is the same photo I took on graduation day. Me in a cap and gown, sitting in an empty row of chairs after everyone had left. No balloons, no flowers, no crowd. Just me, looking tired, holding my diploma. It used to make my stomach drop when I looked at it. That tight, bitter feeling you get when you remember something that should have gone differently. But now, it's not like that. Now, it's a marker. That photo reminds me of where I started, what I carried by myself, and what I'm not carrying anymore. It's not there out of spite. I don't glance at it every day with some burning desire to prove anyone wrong. It's just truth. A quiet kind. The kind that doesn't need to yell to be real. Sometimes people see it when they stop by. A friend, a coworker. Someone always asks, "Is that your graduation?" I say yes. They usually follow it up with, "Who took the photo?" And I tell them, "I did. Everyone else was gone." Most people don't push past that. They nod, maybe say, "Wow," and move on. But every now and then, someone lingers a little longer. They look again, and I can tell they get it. I'm not bitter. That surprises people when I say it. They expect me to be angry, to still carry that grudge. But anger is heavy, and I've done enough heavy lifting for one lifetime. I'm just done pretending that certain absences didn't matter. Because they did. They do. My family says they're proud of me now. My mom tells people about my job. My dad brags about how I run projects, even if he doesn't really understand what that means. Jake has my name saved in his phone as Big Sis. Tyler sends me memes with captions like, "This you?" Anytime a viral post about high-achieving women pops up. That's fine. I don't need it. I'm not reaching for their approval anymore. I've stopped waiting for them to catch up. If they want to say they're proud, they can. If they want to tell their friends I'm the successful one in the family, that's their business. But I know what pride really looks like now. It's not a belated text. It's not a speech after a paycheck lands. It's showing up when nothing's guaranteed. It's folding chairs and bad coffee in a packed auditorium. It's waiting in line to say, "You did it," even if you don't know what to say next. They didn't show up. Not then. And that absence shaped me more than any compliment ever could. I go home sometimes, not often. A few holidays a year. I drive myself, keep visits short, stay in a guest room, sometimes a hotel if I need space. The dynamic has shifted. I'm not the helper anymore, not the fixer. I'm just a visitor. And that's enough. They've learned to live with my boundaries, or at least stop trying to cross them. There are still moments where old habits try to sneak back in. A casual comment about how I shouldn't be a stranger. A guilt-tinged request for just a little help. But now, I don't hesitate. I say no, calmly, without explanation. Not everything needs a speech. Some things just need a full stop. The truth is, I used to think that if I just achieved enough, if I became the kind of person worth being proud of, they'd come around. That they'd see me, understand me, want to meet me where I was. But I don't think like that anymore. Because what I've learned is that recognition given too late isn't recognition. It's regret. It's reputation maintenance. It's a hand held out after the damage has already been done. I'm not here to repair anyone else's reputation. I'm here to live the life I built, on my own, from the ground up. And I like the person I've become. I've got close friends now, people who check in not because they want something, but because they care. I've got colleagues who trust my judgment, a manager who respects my boundaries, a routine that doesn't run me into the ground. I travel when I want. I sleep well at night. I save. I laugh. I take photos with people who want to be in the frame with me. That's the legacy. Not revenge. Not payback. Just the quiet power of choosing yourself and meaning it. So yes, I keep the photo on my desk. Not because it hurts, but because it tells the truth. That on a day when no one else showed up, I still did. And that was enough. If you've ever been in a situation where the people closest to you only showed up when it benefited them, how did you handle it? Did you draw a boundary? Or did you give them another chance? Let me know in the comments. I read every one. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more real stories about self-worth, hard choices, and what it means to finally stand your ground. Until next time, take care of yourself first. You're allowed to.